Many men in the industry of coal, whiskey, hogs, iron, brass, they couldn't wait for the opening of the Ohio Canal in 1827. But none more so than James Brown, who was planning on shipping money in bulk. James Brown was a notorious counterfeiter in the 1800s. This man would sell $5,000 worth of counterfeit money for $1,000 worth of real money. But why would someone want to pay $1,000 in real money for $5,000 of counterfeit money? Today we'll meet a man who was revered by locals as a modern-day Robin Hood, and he was also despised by law enforcement as a criminal whose flaunted corruption needed stopped at any cost. This was certainly an eye-opening experience for me as I was researching. It's a very interesting story. So if you're curious, let's take a walk through history. Well, you see, back in the 1800s, money was scarce. So scarce that most people preferred counterfeit money rather than no money at all. Back in the American Revolutionary War, the Continental Congress decided to issue American currency. Just another way of pushing themselves away from the rule of England. But by doing that and not being able to print enough money, they actually created a scarcity of money in the colonies. And that trickled down all the way into the 1800s. You see, during that time, paper money was printed by banks, about 1,600 of them nationwide, and they were regulated by each state. So with all of that different type of currency going around, it was almost impossible to determine which notes were real and which notes weren't. Brown decided to take advantage of the poorly regulated currency and set up one of the largest counterfeiting operations in the country, right here out of this building. He used this building as cover, setting up as a mercantile operation and a tavern. So in the mercantile portion, he had about $2,000 worth of product displayed. And the local sheriff would notice pallets and pallets of merchandise being shipped out of this building almost nightly. He began to wonder what was going on. He only had $2,000 worth of merchandise. Where did all the merchandise come that he was shipping out? The reason Brown chose this building is because of its location to the canal. The Ohio Canal, newly built, ran adjacent to the building and gave him quick and easy access to load and offload the currency. Brown saw his biggest opportunity in notes that were distributed from the bank in Philadelphia. These notes were scarce and hardly ever made it this far east. So creating plates that resembled those notes were in his best interest. Brown acquired some very fine plates and had some very fine machines, but he needed to scale his operation. And to do that, he needed capital. He needed to raise his capital of good money so that he could expand his operation with more counterfeit machines and more quality plates. You see, Brown rarely used counterfeit money to make his purchases. The way Brown raised good money made him a legend all up and down the Cuyahoga. One night, James took 5 horses from his barn here on the banks of the Cuyahoga and rode eastward towards Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When he got to Warren, Ohio, he dropped off his prize horse, Old John, at a stable and told the stable hand to feed him well but keep the saddle on. He then kept venturing eastward towards Pittsburgh, dropping off the remaining horses at 30-mile intervals. When he finally rode into Pittsburgh, he rested until the late afternoon. And then, with calm, cool collectedness, he sauntered into a bank with false credentials and a money order. He withdrew a large sum of money under the false pretense and turned and bid everybody a good day, exited the bank as if he didn't have a care in the world. But as soon as he got to his horse, he threw the good money in his saddlebag and rode like the wind on his way back to Ohio. Once he got to the first stable, 30 miles out from Pittsburgh, he hopped off his lathered horse, threw the reins to the keeper, and said, "Get me the old Virginia Red." He climbed upon that horse and rode out at a feverish pitch. He kept this up, keeping his horses at full gallop until he reached Warren. When he reached Warren, Ohio, he was dead tired, but there was no time to rest. He got back on Old John and rode as fast as he could from Warren, Ohio, back to his stables here in Boston. As soon as he arrived, he went back into his barn, got water for himself and his horse, and immediately went to the wood pile that was adjacent to his neighbor's house and started chopping wood. You see, James needed an alibi. The chopping wood at 7:30 in the morning woke the neighbor's wife. When she came out and asked James what he was doing, the first thing he did was inquire what time it was. She told him it was 7:30, and he apologized for starting his daily task so soon. That was the genius of the plan. By the time the authorities figured out who they thought it was who robbed the bank, and they finally made it to Boston, Ohio, he had a clear-cut alibi. There's no way a single rider on one horse, could make it from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Boston, Ohio in that short a time span. His neighbor's wife provided that alibi as an eyewitness to James cutting wood at 7:30 in the morning. So there's James Brown building his wealth by producing large quantities of counterfeit currency and selling it all over the world, flooding the market with cash so that the good people of the nation would have the cash on hand to purchase the things that they needed to survive. James Brown was revered as a hero, and his counterfeit business was the worst kept secret in all the land. Technically, he wasn't breaking any laws. He was selling the counterfeit money as counterfeit money. He made sure that every customer that was purchasing from him knew that they were buying bad money. And that way he kept the long arm of the law at bay. Then in 1832, James Brown slipped up. He used counterfeit currency to buy merchandise in New Orleans to be shipped to the Orient. James was arrested but acquitted and sent back to Boston, Ohio. Once he arrived in Boston, the people loved him so much that they quickly elected him Justice of the Peace. He administered his office with such attention to detail that he was elected twice. While he held office, it was well known that he was heading the counterfeiting syndicate, but the people didn't care. As long as he looked the other way when they used his counterfeit currency, what was it to them? Once James's tenure as Justice of the Peace was over, he went back to his criminal ways, and in fact he was arrested 12 times between 1837 and 1840. Finally, in 1846, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but that sentence was reduced to 3 years because when he was in prison, he helped to nurse other inmates who suffered from cholera during the epidemic. Brown died in 1865 going through the Peninsula Lock. This canal heads right to the lock, which is right behind you. He was walking on a canal boat, and as he walked from stem to stern, he slipped and fell from the top of the boat, landing at the bottom. He fractured his shoulder and his skull. James Brown is buried here in Boston, Ohio at the Boston Cemetery. It's a very, very small marker. There is a legend that James Brown had hidden a wealth of money somewhere in the Cuyahoga Valley, and he was not able to retrieve it before he died. So, maybe someday somebody will encounter that money. Let's hope it's not counterfeit. Folks, we wanted to tell you that we have a merch shop. Megan's going to tell you all about it.
We have pins, we have cups, we have shirts, we have tank tops.
We have hats.
Oh, we have hats. We do have hats.
So if you're so inclined, just go to the description down below. It's got a link to our link tree with all of our social media and our merch shop. And if also you're so inclined, we are also on Patreon. What do they get if they join Patreon?
If you join Patreon, we have 2 tiers, which includes some exclusive behind-the-scenes content from us, some exclusive videos, and a lot more. So if you want to join to help support us, please do. That would be amazing.
Only if you can. What's most important to all of us is that we continue to build our community here on YouTube. We continue to talk to all of you on a regular basis in the comment section. That's really where it's at. But gas is expensive, and we do travel across the state to get these videos. So if you can and you're so inclined, there's no pressure whatsoever. Dean, why don't you do the outro for us?
Okay. Make sure to like and subscribe and share, comment, and click the notification bell.
Nice job. Good job.
Yep.
Both of you. Good job. And we'll see you next time, folks, as we explore more curious history.
Take care.
Bob, this way.
Sorry.